Jake Morrison gripped the control panel as his cargo ship shook violently. Red warning lights flashed everywhere in the small cockpit. The engine was dead, and he was falling toward the planet below. "Come on, old girl," he whispered to his ship, the Starlight Runner. But she was done. 20 years of hauling cargo across space had finally caught up with her. The engine had exploded, taking life support with it. Jake looked at his instruments. Oxygen would last maybe 6 hours. The emergency beacon was broken. No one knew where he was. This supply run to the outer colonies was supposed to be simple and quiet. The ship hit the atmosphere hard. Jake held on as everything around him rattled and sparked. He managed to fire the landing thrusters just before impact. The Starlight Runner crashed into a forest of strange blue trees, skidding to a stop in a clearing. Jake's head hurt, and his left arm was bleeding. He checked the air outside. It was breathable, which was lucky. The ship's hull was cracked in 3 places. Even if he could fix the engine, the ship would never fly again. He grabbed his emergency pack and stepped outside. The planet was beautiful. 2 purple suns hung in a green sky. The blue trees made soft musical sounds in the wind. Strange flowers glowed with their own light. But Jake had bigger problems. His radio was smashed. The food in his pack would last 3 days. There was no water nearby that he could see. This planet wasn't on any map he knew. On his second day, Jake heard voices. He hid behind his crashed ship and watched as strange beings walked into the clearing. They looked almost human but were made of what seemed like living crystal. Their skin sparkled like diamonds and they moved with a grace that seemed impossible. There were 5 of them. The tallest one, clearly their leader, had deep blue crystal skin and eyes that glowed with soft white light. She was beautiful in a way that took Jake's breath away. The crystal beings examined his ship carefully. They touched the hull and seemed to communicate without speaking. Jake noticed their eyes would flash different colors when they looked at each other. The leader suddenly turned and looked right at Jake's hiding spot. She said something in a voice like wind chimes, then walked toward him with her hands raised, showing she meant no harm. Jake stepped out slowly. "Hello," he said, knowing they probably couldn't understand him. The crystal woman tilted her head and touched her chest. "Kira," she said in a voice like music. "Jake," he replied, copying her gesture. Kira's eyes flashed bright blue, and suddenly, Jake felt a warm feeling in his mind. Not thoughts exactly, but emotions, kindness, curiosity, concern for his pain. She was reading his mind somehow, he realized, but it didn't feel wrong or scary. It felt gentle, like a friend asking if he was okay. Kira looked at his bleeding arm and made soft, clicking sounds. The other crystal beings gathered around Jake. One of them, with green crystal skin, knelt down and examined his wounds. Jake tried to pull away, but Kira's hand on his shoulder filled him with calm. The green one touched Jake's arm, and a warm blue light flowed from her fingers. The pain disappeared instantly. When the light faded, his arm was completely healed. Jake stared at his arm in amazement. "How did you do that?" Kira's eyes flashed again and Jake felt her amusement. She gestured toward his broken ship, then back to him. The message was clear. "You're hurt and stranded. We want to help." Jake spent the next hour trying to communicate with them. He learned that the crystal beings called themselves Zephyrians. They lived in a city nearby. They had never seen anything like his ship or his species before. Kira seemed to be their leader or elder. When Jake showed her his empty water bottle, she immediately understood. She spoke to the others in their chiming language, and 2 of them ran off into the forest. They returned with clay vessels filled with clean, sweet water. Jake drank deeply while Kira watched with what he thought was approval. As the day grew darker, Kira made it clear that Jake should come with them. She showed him images in his mind. A warm place to sleep, food, safety. Jake looked back at his ruined ship. He had no choice. The Zephyrian city was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Buildings grew from the ground like crystal trees, glowing, with soft-colored light. Gardens of impossible plants filled the spaces between structures. Everything was beautiful and peaceful. Kira led Jake to a small building near the center of the city. Inside, it was furnished with what looked like furniture made from shaped crystal, but everything was comfortable and warm to the touch. She showed him a bed, a place to wash, and brought him food that tasted better than anything he'd eaten in years. Jake tried to thank her, but she just smiled and touched his mind again with feelings of welcome and friendship. That night, Jake lay on the crystal bed and stared up through a transparent ceiling at the stars. He was stranded on an alien world, dependent on beings he'd just met. But for the first time since his ship had crashed, he felt safe. Kira had saved his life without asking for anything in return. Her people had welcomed a complete stranger from another world simply because he needed help. Jake had heard stories of alien species in the galaxy, but most of them were about conquest or trade or war. The Zephyrians were different. They had shown him kindness for no reason except that it was the right thing to do. Jake closed his eyes and tried to sleep. He had no idea that this simple act of alien compassion would soon change the fate of both their species forever. Jake had been living with the Zephyrians for 3 months. Every day brought new wonders. He learned that they could share thoughts and feelings through touch. Their crystal bodies could store and channel energy in ways that seemed like magic to him. They grew their food in gardens that sang with harmonious sounds, and their technology was powered by crystals that captured starlight. Kira taught him their language slowly, patiently. Jake taught her about humans and Earth. She was fascinated by his stories of cities made from metal and stone, of humans who couldn't read minds, of a species that had to use machines to fly between stars. The Zephyrians were peaceful people. They had no weapons, no armies, no police. Crime was almost unknown because everyone could feel each other's emotions. Lies were impossible when minds could touch. They settled disagreements through understanding and compromise. Jake felt more at home here than he had anywhere in years. The cargo runs had been lonely work, spending months alone in space. Here he was surrounded by beings who genuinely cared about his well-being. He had managed to repair his emergency radio using Zephyrian crystal technology. The crystals could boost his signal far beyond what human tech could manage. Jake sent messages toward human space every day, hoping someone would hear him. On a quiet morning, as Jake helped tend the singing gardens, everything changed. The sky above the city suddenly filled with shadows. Massive ships appeared from nowhere, blocking out the suns. The ships were dark gray and covered with weapon ports. They looked like floating fortresses designed for war. The Zephyrians stopped their work and looked up in fear. Their crystal skin flickered with nervous colors. Jake had never seen them afraid before, and it worried him deeply. A booming voice echoed across the city, speaking in the Zephyrian language. Jake couldn't understand all the words, but he caught enough to know it was some kind of demand or threat. Kira rushed to Jake's side, her skin now a worried shade of pale blue. She touched his arm, and suddenly he could understand the alien voice through her translation ability. "People of this world," the voice said. "I am Admiral Vex of the Hegemony Third Fleet. You have committed a crime against galactic law. You have given aid to an inferior species. This contamination cannot be allowed to spread." Jake felt his blood run cold. The Hegemony was famous throughout the galaxy as a military empire that conquered worlds and enslaved species. They believed in something they called galactic purity, the idea that advanced species should never help or mix with lesser ones. "You will surrender the human immediately," Admiral Vex continued. "You will submit to Hegemony oversight and accept our guidance. If you refuse, your species will be removed from existence. You have one standard day to decide." The massive ships moved into battle formation around the planet. Jake counted at least 20 vessels, each one larger than any human warship he had ever seen. Kira gathered the city's elders quickly. Jake sat with them as they discussed what to do. Through Kira's mental touch, he could feel their fear and confusion. They had never dealt with anything like this before. "We should give them what they want," said one elder, his crystal skin flickering with anxiety. "One life is not worth the destruction of our entire species." "But he is innocent," Kira replied. "Jake has done nothing wrong. He is our friend. We cannot simply hand him over to be destroyed." The hegemony is too strong, said another elder. We have no weapons, no way to fight them. What choice do we have? Jake stood up slowly. I'll go with them, he said quietly. I won't let you all die because of me. You saved my life. The least I can do is save yours. Kira's skin flashed bright red with distress. No, that is not the Zephyrian way. We do not abandon friends to save ourselves. But your people will die, Jake said. Then we die with honor, Kira replied firmly. We will not purchase our lives with the blood of an innocent. The other elders agreed, though Jake could feel their terror through Kira's connection. These peaceful people were willing to face extinction, rather than betray someone who had become their friend. Jake felt something break inside his chest. He had never experienced loyalty like this before. These crystal beings, who had only known him for 3 months, were ready to die for him. That night, as the hegemony ships waited in orbit like dark vultures, Jake made a decision. He would sneak out of the city and surrender himself to Admiral Vex. The Zephyrians would try to stop him if they knew, so he would have to do it in secret. But as Jake prepared to leave, a small Zephyrian child named Lux found him. Lux was barely 3 feet tall, with crystal skin that sparkled like starlight. The child had grown attached to Jake over the past months, often following him around the gardens. Lux could sense Jake's plan through the emotional connection all Zephyrians shared. The child's skin turned deep purple with sadness and fear. Through gestures and simple mind touch, Lux begged Jake not to go. Jake knelt down and hugged the crystal child gently. I have to, he whispered, to keep everyone safe. But Lux had other ideas. While Jake was gathering his things, the child ran to Jake's repaired radio equipment. Lux had watched Jake use it many times and remembered which crystals to touch. The child boosted Jake's emergency beacon to maximum power and sent it screaming toward human space. The signal was so strong it could probably be heard from 3 systems away. Jake found Lux at the radio just as the transmission finished. What did you do? He asked. Lux's skin flashed with determination and hope. Through their connection, Jake felt the child's simple but powerful thought. If the hegemony could call for help, then so could Jake. High above them, Admiral Vex detected the human distress signal. The Admiral was not worried. What could one primitive species do against the might of the hegemony? Even if they came, it would only mean more ships to destroy. But Admiral Vex had never encountered humans before. He had no idea what he had just awakened. Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez was finishing her shift aboard the patrol ship Defender when the emergency signal hit her communications array like a hammer. The signal was so powerful it overloaded 3 receivers before she could turn down the volume. Amy had been patrolling the edge of human space for 2 years. Most of her job involved checking on mining stations and cargo routes. She had never received a distress call this strong or this desperate. She listened to Jake Morrison's transmission with growing amazement. A human stranded on an alien world. A peaceful species that had saved his life. A military empire threatening to destroy them all because they had shown kindness to one human being. Amy knew the rules. Any first contact situation had to be reported immediately to Earth Command. But this was bigger than first contact. This was a threat to humanity's first alien friends. She recorded everything and sent it straight to Fleet Admiral Ben Collins at the Pentagon on Earth. Then she changed course and headed toward the Kepler 442 system at maximum speed. It would take her 3 days to get there, but she had to try. At Earth Command headquarters, Fleet Admiral Collins was in a meeting about budget reports when his aide burst through the door. Major Pete Johnson looked like he had seen a ghost. Sir, you need to hear this right now, Johnson said, his voice shaking. Collins listened to Jake's message twice. Then he called an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Within an hour, the most powerful military leaders on Earth were gathered in the secure briefing room. General Lisa Harper, head of the Earth Defense Force, spoke first. This could be a trap. We know nothing about this hegemony. They could be trying to lure our fleet away from Earth. It could be, Collins agreed. But Jake Morrison is a real person. I checked his records. Veteran cargo pilot, Clean record, no connections to any enemy groups, and this signal came from exactly where his flight plan said he was going. Dr. Sam Chen, Earth's top expert on alien life, had been studying the data. Admiral, this could be the most important moment in human history. If this Zephyrian species is real, if they're truly peaceful and helped one of our people just out of kindness, then we're looking at our first real allies in space. Or we're looking at the destruction of our entire fleet, General Harper replied. This hegemony sounds like they have ships we've never seen before. We could be flying into a massacre. Collins stood up and walked to the big screen showing star charts. How many ships do we have ready for immediate deployment? The 3rd Colonial Fleet is fully operational, Harper said. 12 dreadnoughts, 48 cruisers, 96 destroyers. About 300,000 personnel total. That's our entire deep space navy, another general pointed out. If we lose them, Earth will be defenseless. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. May I remind everyone that this isn't just about military strategy? A peaceful alien species is about to be wiped out because they saved one human life. What kind of message does it send if we do nothing? The room fell quiet. Collins knew that every person in this room was thinking the same thing. Earth had always prided itself on protecting its people. The idea of abandoning Jake Morrison and his alien friends went against everything they stood for. The secure phone rang. It was President Mary Johnson calling from the White House. Collins put her on speaker. I've been briefed on the situation, the president said. I want to be very clear about something. We do not abandon our people. We do not abandon those who help our people. If these Zephyrians saved Jake Morrison, then they're under our protection now. Madam President, General Harper said carefully, we're talking about risking our entire space fleet. General, what's the point of having a fleet if we won't use it to protect innocent people? The president replied. These aliens could have let Jake die. Instead, they saved him, healed him, gave him a home. Now they're going to die because of their kindness unless we help them. Collins felt a surge of pride in his commander-in-chief. What are your orders, Madam President? Deploy the fleet. All of it. Show this hegemony what happens when someone threatens Earth's friends. The meeting ended quickly after that. Collins had his orders and everyone knew what had to be done. As the generals and admirals filed out, Dr. Chen approached Collins. Admiral, you should know something else. Chen said quietly. I ran some calculations on that signal strength. For Jake to broadcast that far using alien technology, those crystals the Zephyrians use must be incredibly advanced. If we can form an alliance with them, it could change everything about our technology. Collins nodded. Another reason to save them. Within 2 hours, every major military base on Earth was buzzing with activity. The largest fleet in human history was being assembled. Captains were called back from leave. Engineers worked around the clock to prepare ships for deep space combat. Captain Danny Foster was at his brother's apartment when he got the call. Danny had been on shore leave, trying to forget about Jake's disappearance. Now he learned his brother was alive and in danger. I volunteer for the mission, Danny told his commanding officer immediately. You're too personally involved, came the reply. That's exactly why you need me, Danny said. Jake is my brother. I know how he thinks, how he acts. If anyone can find him and get him out safely, it's me. After some argument, Danny was given command of the Advanced Reconnaissance Wing. His job would be to reach the Kepler 442 system first and assess the situation. The fleet launched 18 hours after Jake's signal reached Earth. It was the fastest military deployment in human history. 12 massive dreadnoughts, their hulls bristling with weapons. 48 cruisers designed for long-range combat. 96 destroyers built for speed and firepower. At the center of the fleet was the flagship Terra's Wrath, Admiral Collins, commanding. The ship was humanity's most advanced vessel, built with the latest technology and armed with weapons that could crack planets. As the fleet jumped into hyperspace, Collins stood on the bridge looking out at the stars. He thought about Jake Morrison, alone on an alien world with only crystal beings for protection. He thought about the Zephyrians, facing extinction because they had shown mercy to a stranger. Admiral, His communications officer said, "We're receiving messages from across human space. Other fleets are asking if they should follow us." Collins smiled grimly. "Tell them to stay at their posts. We'll handle this." But privately, Collins felt a warmth in his chest. Humanity was united in this moment. They were going to war not for conquest or resources, but because someone had been kind to one of their own. The hegemony was about to learn what happened when you threatened human friends. Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet below with satisfaction. 24 hours had passed since his ultimatum. The crystal beings had not responded. Soon he would begin the bombardment that would wipe them from existence. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting some kind of spatial distortion at the edge of the system." Vex barely looked up from his tactical display. "Probably just solar interference. These primitive systems often have unstable space." But the sensor officer's voice grew more urgent. "Sir, the distortion is getting larger. Much larger." Now Vex paid attention. He walked to the main viewer and watched as space itself seemed to bend and twist at the system's edge. Then, like a door opening in the darkness, ships began to emerge. The first ship was massive, larger than any vessel in Vex's fleet. Its hull was white and silver, covered with weapon ports that glowed with barely contained energy. Behind it came another, then another. "How many ships?" Vex demanded. "I count 12 of the large ones so far, sir. But there are more coming. Much more." Vex watched in growing disbelief as humanity's third colonial fleet dropped out of hyperspace. 48 cruisers followed the dreadnoughts. Then 96 destroyers appeared in perfect formation. The human fleet spread across space like a wall of metal and firepower. "Who are they?" Vex whispered. "Unknown species, sir. But they're moving into battle formation around our position." On the planet below, Jake Morrison was helping Elder Kira prepare for the end. The Zephyrians had decided to spend their last hours in prayer and meditation. They faced death with the same peaceful acceptance they brought to everything else. Jake couldn't be so calm. He stood in Kira's crystal home, staring up at the night sky through the transparent ceiling. The hegemony ships hung there like dark stars, ready to rain death on the beautiful city below. Suddenly, new lights appeared in the sky. Bright, clean lights that moved with purpose and precision. Jake's heart jumped as he recognized the design. Those were human ships. Lots of human ships. "Kira," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "Look up." Kira joined him at the window. Her crystal skin began to glow brighter as she sensed Jake's excitement. Through their mental connection, she felt his recognition and hope. More and more. Human ships appeared until the sky was full of them. Jake had never seen so many warships in one place. It looked like Earth had sent their entire fleet. "They came," Jake whispered. They actually came. Admiral Collins stood on the bridge of Terra's Wrath, studying the enemy formation. The hegemony ships were impressive, but they were outnumbered more than 5-1. Still, Collins had no idea what kind of weapons they carried. "Open a channel to the hegemony flagship," he ordered. The main screen flickered, showing Admiral Vex on his bridge. The alien looked like a cross between a lizard and an insect, with black eyes and sharp teeth. His uniform was covered with medals and rank symbols. "I am Fleet Admiral Ben Collins of the Earth Defense Force," Collins said calmly. "You are threatening beings who gave aid to one of our people. We are here to collect our citizen and protect our friends." Vex's translator worked quickly. When he understood the message, he began to laugh. It was an ugly sound that made Collins's skin crawl. "One human," Vex said, his voice full of contempt. "You brought all these ships for one insignificant creature? Your species is even more foolish than I thought." "That one human was shown kindness by the people you're threatening," Collins replied. "We don't abandon our friends." "Friends?" Vex spit the word like it tasted bad. "These crystal beings are contaminated by contact with your inferior species. They must be cleansed, as must you, apparently." Collins felt his anger rising, but he kept his voice steady. You have one chance, Admiral. Leave this system now, and we'll consider this a misunderstanding. Stay, and we'll remove you. Vex's laughter grew louder. Remove us? Little human, do you have any idea who you're threatening? The hegemony has conquered 1,000 worlds. We have crushed species far more advanced than yours. Maybe, Colin said quietly. But you've never fought humans before. He cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. Target there, flagship. Prepare for full bombardment. But before Collins could give the order to fire, his tactical officer spoke up. Admiral, recommend we show them what they're facing first. Collins considered this. It would be better to avoid a battle, if possible, even though he was confident of victory. What do you suggest? There's an uninhabited moon about 2 million kilometers away. We could demonstrate our firepower there. Collins smiled. Excellent idea. Captain Foster, take your wing and show our friends what human weapons can do. Danny. Foster had been waiting for this moment. His brother was down on that planet and these alien bullies had threatened him. It was time to show them why that was a bad idea. All ships, this is Foster, he said over the squadron comm. Target the moon, coordinated strike on my mark. 48 human ships turned toward the small moon, their weapons charged with a sound like thunder. Energy built up in plasma cannons and particle beams until the ships glowed like small suns. Fire, Foster ordered. The combined firepower of 48 warships struck the moon at the same instant. The rock simply vanished in a flash of light brighter than the system's suns. Where a moon had been, there was now only empty space and expanding gas. Admiral Vex stared at the empty space where the moon had been. His sensor officer was frantically checking readings, trying to understand what had just happened. Sir, the officer said in a shaky voice, they completely destroyed it, not just the surface, the entire moon. It's gone. Vex felt something he hadn't experienced in years, fear. His 20 ships had been designed to bombard planets from orbit, but he had never seen anything like the coordinated precision the humans had just displayed. Collins's voice came over the comm again. That was a demonstration, Admiral. We can do the same thing to your ships, but we'd prefer not to. Leave now, and no one has to die today. Vex looked at his tactical display. His ships were powerful, but they were spread out around the planet. The humans had arrived in perfect battle formation. If this turned into a fight, his fleet would be destroyed in minutes. But the hegemony did not retreat. It was not their way. You may have superior numbers, Vex said, but the hegemony does not surrender. If you want this system, you'll have to take it. Collins sighed. He had hoped to avoid bloodshed, but some people only understood force. All ships, he announced on the fleet channel. Prepare for battle, protect the planet and our people at all costs. Down on the surface, Jake Morrison watched the lights in the sky with a mixture of hope and terror. The most powerful fleet in human history was about to fight for him and his crystal friends. He just hoped they were strong enough to win. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. Admiral Vex had expected a long, difficult fight against an unknown enemy. Instead, he watched his fleet get torn apart by human weapons with terrifying efficiency. The humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. Their ships moved together like parts of one giant machine. When his cruiser fired at a human destroyer, 3 other human ships immediately moved to protect it. When he tried to break their formation, they adapted instantly. Worst of all was their accuracy. Human weapons hit their targets every single time. Vex's ships were built for bombarding planets, not for fighting other warships. Against human military precision, they stood no chance. Admiral, his tactical officer called out, we've lost 18 ships. Only 6 remain operational. Vex looked around his damaged bridge. Smoke filled the air, and half his control panels were dark. His flagship was dying around him. Sir, his communications officer said urgently, the humans are sending another message. Admiral Collins appeared on the main screen again. His ship hadn't even been scratched during the battle. Admiral Vex, Collins said calmly. You have two choices. Surrender now, or watch the rest of your fleet die. Your weapons can't hurt us, but ours can certainly hurt you. Vex wanted to keep fighting, but he wasn't stupid. The humans had proved their point. His remaining ships couldn't even damage their hulls. What are your terms? Vex asked through gritted teeth. Simple. You leave this system immediately. You report to your hegemony leaders that humans are now protecting the Zephyrians. Any future attacks on this world will be considered acts of war against Earth. Vex felt his pride burning, but he had no choice. Agreed. But the hegemony will remember this. We will return with a larger fleet. Collins smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. We'll be ready for you. And next time, we might not be so generous. The surviving hegemony ships limped out of the system, leaving wreckage floating in space. Admiral Vex's last transmission was a promise of revenge, but Collins wasn't worried. Earth would be ready for whatever came next. Down on the planet, Jake Morrison stood with Elder Kira watching the sky clear of enemy ships. The human fleet remained, their lights twinkling like protective stars above the Crystal City. It's over, Jake said, hardly believing it himself. Kira's skin glowed with warm colors as she felt his relief and joy. Through their mental connection, she shared her own amazement. Her people had been ready to die rather than betray a friend, now that friends' entire species had come to save them. Your people, Kira said in her musical voice. They are truly remarkable. Jake laughed, tears running down his face. Yeah, they can be pretty stubborn when they want to be. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Human shuttles landed near the Crystal City, bringing diplomats, scientists, and engineers. Jake found himself serving as translator and guide, helping two completely different species understand each other. Admiral Collins came down to the planet personally. He was a tall, serious man with gray hair and kind eyes. When he met Jake, he shook his hand firmly. Mr. Morrison, Collins said, your message saved more than just your life. You may have started the most important alliance in human history. Dr. Rachel Green, Earth's top diplomat, arrived 2 days later with a full negotiation team. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who spoke several alien languages. But with the Zephyrians, language wasn't the main barrier. Their ability to share emotions and thoughts made communication much easier than anyone had expected. Elder Kira represented her people in the talks. The negotiations took place in a beautiful crystal amphitheater that the Zephyrians had grown specially for the occasion. Jake sat with both groups, helping translate not just words but cultural concepts. The Zephyrian people formally request protection under human authority, Kira announced during the first session. We offer our friendship, our knowledge, and our world as a base for human operations in this region of space. Dr. Green was amazed by the offer. Elder Kira, this is incredibly generous. But we want to be clear that this would be a partnership, not a conquest. Your people would remain free and independent. We understand, Kira replied. But we have seen what kindness humans show to their friends. We have also seen what strength they bring to protect the innocent. We wish to be part of this. Within a week, the basic agreement was complete. Kepler 442b would become the first joint human-alien colony. The Zephyrians would share their crystal technology with Earth scientists. In return, humans would protect the planet and help the Zephyrians explore the galaxy. Construction began immediately on a space station in orbit around the planet. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian crystal growers to create something new. The station would be built from both human metal and Zephyrian living crystal, combining the best of both technologies. Jake Morrison was offered several different jobs. Earth Command wanted him to join their diplomatic corps. The science teams wanted him to help study Zephyrian technology. But Jake had a different idea. I want to stay here, he told Admiral Collins. Make me the official ambassador. I understand both peoples now. I can help them work together. Collins agreed immediately. Jake Morrison became Earth's first alien world ambassador. His brother Danny was promoted to admiral and given command of the new Guardian fleet, a permanent force stationed to protect the Kepler 442 system. 3 months after the battle, Jake stood on the observation deck of the new space station. Through the transparent walls, he could see human ships patrolling alongside Zephyrian crystal vessels. Below, the planet sparkled with both human cities and crystal gardens. Elder Kira joined him at the window. Her skin had grown more colorful, over the past months reflecting the joy her people felt at their new partnership. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Your ship crashing here changed everything for both our species." Jake thought about it. His old life of lonely cargo runs seemed very far away now. "No regrets," he said finally. "Sometimes the best things happen by accident." They watched as a group of human and Zephyrian children played together in the station's central garden. The human kids were fascinated by their crystal friends' ability to glow and change colors. The Zephyrian children loved learning about human technology and stories. "What do you think happens next?" Kira asked. Jake smiled as he saw a human destroyer and a Zephyrian ship flying together on patrol. "I think the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place." Far away in the depths of space, Admiral Vex was reporting to his hegemony superiors. His story of defeat was met with disbelief and anger. But slowly, word began to spread throughout the galaxy. Humans had appeared, on the galactic stage in dramatic fashion. They had shown that they would fight entire fleets to protect one of their own. More importantly, they had proved that they would extend that same protection to anyone who showed kindness to humanity. Other species took notice. Some with hostile intentions reconsidered their plans. Others, who had been oppressed by empires, like the hegemony, began to hope that help might be coming. Earth had gained its first alien allies, but more than that, humanity had announced its values to the galaxy. They stood for friendship, loyalty, and protection of the innocent, and they had the military power to back up those values. The age of human expansion had begun, built not on conquest, but on the simple idea that kindness deserved protection, no matter who showed it or who received it.